All right, Georgia survives against South Carolina today inside Sanford Stadium, 24-14. Kind of an ugly game, especially in the first half. Georgia couldn't do anything right in the first half, whether it was special teams blunders, couldn't get anything going offensively, defensively. South Carolina had receivers running all over the place, but second half adjustments won this game for Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs. As poorly as they played that first half, going into halftime down 11, they came out the complete opposite in the second half. The offensive line turned into a bully. They started running the ball. Carson Beck made some really nice throws down the stretch. Georgia ended up going on a 21-0 run to close this game out, winning 24-14. Wasn't pretty. There's another slow, sluggish start for this team. Third week in a row, they're 3-0, but they've had 3 slow starts, and today it almost cost them. Things were not looking good at the half. Whether it was just the inability to score touchdowns in the red zone, the missed field goal, just giving up a ton of yards through the air defensively. Spencer Rattler looked outstanding in the first half. He could not have played better. And we've said if you want to beat the Georgia Bulldogs, you have to have phenomenal and elite quarterback play, and that's what they got from Spencer Rattler for the first half. Second half was completely different story. Michael Williams, Malachi Starks, Javon Dumas-Johnson, they went after Spencer Rattler and just harassed him the entire second half. Didn't give up a single point in the second half. They took South Carolina's best punch today and they won by double digits. They should have had 6 more points. They've got to figure out that kicker spot because that cannot continue to happen. Bad starts the season for Peyton Woodring, but if you want to complain about Mike Bobo and Carson Beck and the offensive line, you have that right. Things looked ugly in the first half, and they've got to clean things up. All of them. Every aspect of the offense has to get better. But I think you need to give them credit for the adjustments they made in the second half. Carson started throwing the ball more down the field, and you saw what happened. He connected on a few of those balls, but it just seems that he was playing a little too safe in that first half, checking the ball down a little bit when there were guys open down the field. And again, they started off a little slow running the football, but Daijun Edwards was an absolute beast today. I think 118 yards. He was a true difference maker and a guy that they would have loved to have the last 2 weeks. Obviously didn't need him. They needed him today. And if there was no Daijun Edwards, I don't know if they win this ball game. Dylan Bell came up big running the football again. Cash Jones had a very big touchdown that made it a 2-score game, but they have still got to play better. We haven't seen this team play a full 4 quarters of good football all season. They played as bad as they could possibly play in that first half, and they dominated the second half. They were kind of sleepwalking, and I don't know what has to happen for them to come out strong with some fire and excitement, but that's what South Carolina did. They came ready to play, and they punched Georgia right in the mouth, gave them everything they had, and they were making plays. Their players executed their game plan better than Georgia's players executed theirs. I don't want to say that Georgia got outcoached in this game, because that's not what happened, but Carolina came out, with some fire, and they played better than Georgia. And, I don't know what Kirby Smart said to these guys at the half. I would love to hear it. I'm sure that halftime, pep talk, if you want to call it that, could get leaked, but I'm sure he got after him because they came out, took the ball to start the second half, and marched right down the field. Hopefully you cannot hear all of the grounds crew doing their thing. It's really loud, so I do apologize for that, but instant reaction, right? That's what we do here inside Sanford Stadium, but a win is a win. This is a tough come-from-behind victory, and I know that Georgia fans are not going to be happy with a 10-point win over South Carolina, but maybe South Carolina is better than people give them credit for. Spencer Rattler is a good player, and he made a lot of big-time throws today that most quarterbacks cannot make, at least in the first half. Their offensive line played, I thought, better than I expected them to in the first half, but man, Georgia's defense was unbelievable in that second half against the run, against the pass. They came to play. They made the adjustments. Malachi Starks might be the best safety in college football. Michael Williams played like an All-American today. Kamari Laster with the hit stick. He brings that physical presence. They all stepped up, and when they needed a play to be made, they made it. And again, I still think it goes back to the offense. It's just not as crisp and efficient as we've seen under Todd Monken the last several years. No Todd Monken, no Stetson Bennett, and this looks kind of like a James Coley, Jim Chaney, Jake Fromm type of offense right now, where sometimes it can kind of look bad and they just don't gel at times. There's no chemistry, there's no flow, and there was none of that in the first half today. And they move the ball, but they've got to score touchdowns when they get into the red zone, especially when these cheap shots, or I said cheap shots, chip shot field goals that should be easy, that these kickers should be making at least 9 out of 10 times. Peyton Woodring is not making those. These field goals are not automatic when you get inside the 25-yard line. Got to finish with touchdowns, and they did in the second half. 3 rushing touchdowns, 1 from Dylan Bell, the 1 from Dajan Edwards, I think 1 from Cash Jones. Again, this is all top of the head. I don't have the final stats with me, but I do think Carson was about 27 for 35 for about 270 yards, no touchdowns, no turnovers. He played safe, and he did make some big throws in the second half when they needed him to. I think Dominic Lovett had 7 catches. Brock Bowers, made a couple of those Brock Bowers types of plays. Marcus Rosemy-Jackson has turned into a guy that they really look to often. But Dajan Edwards has the ability to catch out of the backfield, so does Cash Jones, but they need Ladd McConkey back. They need John Bullard back defensively, even though I thought that unit played outstanding. But they faced adversity today, and they pushed through it. They knew at half, if they don't come out hot and start putting some points up on the board, especially with that first drive, that they could 100% lose this game. And I think a lot of you watching this thought they were going to lose the game at halftime. I'm sure there are several TVs broken among the Georgia fan base, but this is what you want to see out of champions. And I don't know if this is a national championship caliber team. I don't know if anyone is right now, though. So yeah, Georgia should probably be number 1 heading into next week. They had a hard-fought, come-from-behind victory over an SEC opponent, and they didn't cover. They didn't win by 24, 27 points like a lot of people thought, but they had to grind this out. This was a battle, and they took South Carolina's best shot. Spencer Rattler played great against Clemson and Tennessee last year, but that first half, this was looking like the Spencer Rattler game, and this was looking a lot like 2019. But whatever happened at halftime, they turned it around. They came out firing, and they played with their hair on fire, and they executed both offense, defense, special teams. Look like a completely different team. I'd say that South Carolina is that Jekyll and Hyde team where you don't know what you're going to get. Well, today that was Georgia. I don't know who's the good guy, Jekyll or Hyde. I think Dr. Jekyll's the good guy, and Mr. Hyde is the bad guy, and they go back and forth. I don't know. I wasn't the best reader in school. I know this sounds crazy, but I wasn't. But this team can look so bland and boring at times and look like they're really struggling, and then you blink and they look like the best team in college football again. And that's what we saw in the second half. They pushed them around. They bodied Spencer Rattler and that South Carolina offensive line. That defense was flying around. That's as good a half as I've seen from a Georgia defense since probably the 2021 season. I'm sure if I really dug into it, I could find a half from last year that was good. But when they needed to make stops, they got after Spencer Rattler, got him to the ground, forced him to throw out of bounds, picked off 2 passes in the second half when they were trying to rally back. They played as good as they could in the second half. And so did the offense, I think. 21-0 run. That's exactly what they needed if they wanted to win this game. They had to come out and play completely different, and they did. And that's what championship teams do. And they didn't blink. And I'm sure there's a post-game video the program's going to release where the coaches get after him at halftime and tell him, hey, I don't know if the season was on the line, but you can't lose to South Carolina when you're the number 1 team in the country. Can't happen again like it did in 2019. But this is a hard-fought victory. I've said that 3 times now, and they did. They came from behind, fought through adversity, and they're going to have to do that again late in the season as well. This is not the first time where they're going to get punched in the mouth and have to play from behind and execute play after play after play and get into the end zone when they need to and not settle for field goals and come up with big third down stops and turnovers late in the ball game. That's what they did today. So I know Georgia fans are not going to be super thrilled with how they played today, but you got to be happy that they won, because there was a time in this game where it didn't look likely. Going into the half, I remember thinking, I think Georgia's still going to win this game, but they need points in their first possession in the second half. And they came out, marched it right down the field, and that's when things started clicking. You saw a rhythm to the offense. You saw some chemistry. And Carson Beck made a lot of throws. Dajan Edwards had big-time runs. The offensive line really turned it around. I don't know what Stacey Searles or Kirby told them, but They were a completely different unit in the second half. But, you know, a lot of teams across college football are struggling a little bit, and Georgia obviously did today. It wasn't a sluggish first quarter, it was a sluggish first half, but it was a completely opposite team and performance in the second half, and they ran away with the victory. Again, they took a big-time shot from a South Carolina team. They took their best shot. They won by 10 points. A lot to clean up, but there's a lot to like. And I think if you really dig into it, Georgia fans can find plenty of positives to come from this clutch, come from behind victory. It's not easy. Playing in this conference is not easy. I know the SEC doesn't look great right now, but South Carolina, they could play, and they proved it today. They're not a pushover, and they really pushed Georgia, but Georgia rose to the occasion. They won the game 24-14. Not the prettiest win, but a much needed come from behind victory here in Athens today. Guys, thanks for watching this video. As always, stay tuned to the next video coming up right now, and I will see you over on Dog Post.